The crumpled note fell from Maria's trembling fingers as she stared at the elegant handwriting that would change everything she thought she knew about the quiet man washing dishes in her kitchen. Thank you for believing someone like me deserves kindness. Your generosity saved my family when I had nowhere else to turn. One day I hope to repay what you've given us. It was signed simply E, but it was the embossed letterhead at the top that made her heart stop beating. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning rush at Rosie's Diner had been particularly brutal. Coffee spilled across worn linoleum floors, breakfast orders shouted over the clatter of plates, and the ancient dishwasher in the back corner struggling to keep pace with the endless stream of dirty dishes. Maria Gonzalez wiped sweat from her forehead as she surveyed the controlled chaos of her small restaurant, a place she'd poured her heart and savings into 3 years ago when her husband passed away. She'd inherited more debt than hope, but Rosie's Diner had become her lifeline, named after her grandmother who taught her that food was love made visible. The red vinyl booths were patched with duct tape, the ceiling leaked when it rained hard, and the grill made strange noises that would worry any reasonable person. But it was hers, and more importantly, it fed people who needed feeding in this forgotten corner of Phoenix where gentrification hadn't yet reached. In the kitchen's far corner, barely visible behind towering stacks of plates and steaming water, worked a man whose presence had become as reliable as sunrise. Eduardo, though everyone called him Eddie, had appeared at her back door 6 months ago during the dinner rush. He was thin, almost gaunt, with prematurely gray hair and clothes that had seen better decades. Most striking were his eyes, a deep brown that seemed to hold stories he couldn't tell. When Maria had hurriedly explained through gestures that she needed help immediately, Eddie had simply nodded, rolled up his sleeves, and began washing dishes with a precision that spoke of experience. She discovered quickly that he couldn't speak, communicating only through nods, gestures, and occasionally carefully written notes. His identification showed Eduardo Santos, age 42, but beyond that he remained an enigma wrapped in steam and soap suds. What made Eddie different wasn't just his silent efficiency or the way he seemed to understand exactly what needed doing before being asked. It was the small things that set him apart from other workers she'd employed over the years. He arrived 30 minutes early every shift, staying late without being asked to help close. When the ancient dishwasher finally broke down completely, he'd somehow fixed it overnight, refusing any extra payment. And then there were the notes. They started appearing randomly throughout the restaurant, small pieces of paper with messages that seemed to know exactly what each recipient needed to hear. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly widow who came in every Tuesday for coffee and pie, found one tucked under her saucer that read, "Your smile brightens everyone's day. Thank you for sharing your stories with us." Tommy Rodriguez, the teenager who buzzed tables after school to help his family pay rent, discovered a note in his locker saying, "Your hard work inspires everyone around you. Never stop reaching for your dreams." At first, Maria assumed the notes were coincidental, perhaps Eddie was practicing his English writing skills. But as weeks passed, the messages became more personal, more perfectly timed. A struggling single mother received encouragement about her job interview the day before it happened. A veteran dealing with nightmares found a note reminding him that seeking help was a sign of strength, not weakness. Somehow, this silent dishwasher seemed to see into people's hearts and know exactly what words they needed. The lunch crowd thinned as afternoon settled over. The diner. Maria watched Eddie through the kitchen's pass-through window as he methodically cleaned and organized, every movement economical and purposeful. She'd tried many times to engage him in longer conversations through written exchanges, but he consistently deflected personal questions, steering discussions back to work or the weather. His past remained locked away behind gentle smiles and diligent labor. What she did know was that Eddie took 3 buses each way to reach the diner, living in a part of town where rent was cheap but safety wasn't guaranteed. His clothes, while always clean, were clearly secondhand, carefully mended in places where fabric had given way. He never complained, never asked for advances on his paycheck, and turned down invitations to employee gatherings with polite written declinations. Yet, despite his poverty, or perhaps because of it, his generosity toward others seemed boundless. The afternoon lull gave Maria time to notice details that escaped her during busier hours. Today, she observed Eddie carefully portioning leftover bread into small bags, which she knew he distributed to homeless individuals who gathered near the bus station. Last week, she'd caught him slipping a $20 bill into the donation jar for Tommy's sick mother, money that represented nearly half his daily wages. When she'd confronted him about it later through written notes, he'd simply responded, quote, "We help when we can." As closing time approached, Maria began her nightly ritual of reconciling receipts and planning tomorrow's specials. The diner felt peaceful in these quiet moments, the day's stress melting away as Eddie finished cleaning and organizing the kitchen with his characteristic thoroughness. She'd come to treasure these evening transitions, when the chaos settled and she could properly appreciate what she'd built. That's when she noticed the envelope on her desk, her name written across it in Eddie's careful script. Inside was the note that would change everything, along with what appeared to be a formal document she initially dismissed as probably related to his work permit or some other bureaucratic requirement. But as her eyes focused on the letterhead, her world tilted sideways. Santos Foundation, established in memory of beloved wife Isabella Santos and dedicated to supporting community businesses and educational initiatives. The signature at the bottom matched Eddie's handwriting perfectly, but above it was a name that made her question everything. Eduardo Santos, Chief Executive Officer and Founder. Maria's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, searching for information about the Santos Foundation. What she found made her sink into her chair with disbelief. Eduardo Santos, the silent dishwasher who took 3 buses to work for minimum wage, was actually a multimillionaire philanthropist whose foundation had donated over $50 million to various causes throughout the Southwest. The website showed pictures of a man in expensive suits cutting ribbons and shaking hands with politicians, but it was unmistakably Eddie. According to the biographical information, Eduardo had built a successful construction empire from nothing, starting as a day laborer and eventually employing hundreds of workers. His wife Isabella had been a teacher who believed strongly in community support and helping small businesses survive. After her death from cancer 2 years ago, Eduardo had established the foundation in her memory, then seemingly disappeared from public life. The note in her hands suddenly carried far more weight. This wasn't just encouragement from a kind employee, it was a message from someone who could solve all her problems with a single check. But why was he here, washing dishes in her struggling diner, when he could be anywhere in the world? And why had he chosen to help her family of customers and employees through small acts of kindness rather than grand gestures? Sleep eluded Maria that night as questions multiplied in her mind. She thought about every interaction with Eddie over the past 6 months, re-examining. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Conversations and gestures through this new lens of knowledge. His mechanical skills with the equipment, his understanding of food service operations, his ability to anticipate problems before they occurred, all made sense now. This wasn't a man learning the restaurant business. This was someone who'd probably owned dozens of restaurants and understood every aspect of the industry. More troubling was the realization that Eddie's presence at Rosie's Diner wasn't coincidental. Someone with his resources and connections didn't accidentally end up washing dishes in a struggling neighborhood restaurant. He'd chosen to be here, chosen to work alongside her, chosen to help in the most humble way possible, when he could have simply written a check and solved her problems from afar. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching Maria's uncertain mood as she unlocked the diner's front door. She'd decided to confront Eddie directly but gently, acknowledging what she'd discovered while giving him space to explain on his own terms. The breakfast rush would wait. This conversation couldn't. Eddie arrived precisely at his usual time, nodding good morning as he tied his apron and began preparing for the day's work. Maria approached the dishwashing station with coffee and the printed information about his foundation, setting both within his view without speaking. She watched his face carefully, noting the moment recognition dawned in his eyes. For several long moments, neither moved. Eddie stared at the papers, his shoulders sagging slightly as if a weight he'd been carrying had suddenly become visible. When he finally looked up at Maria, his eyes held a mixture of resignation and relief that spoke of secrets finally exposed to daylight. He reached for a notepad, writing slowly and deliberately before turning it toward her. "I never meant to deceive you. I needed to understand what it felt like to earn something again, through honest work, not just write checks and attend board meetings. After Isabella died, I lost myself in foundation paperwork and forgot how to connect with real people facing real problems." Maria read the note twice before responding verbally, knowing he read lips well enough to follow her words. "Why here? Why my restaurant? There are thousands of places you could have chosen." Eddie's response came quickly this time, as if he'd prepared for this question. "Isabella and I ate here once, about a year before she got sick." She said this place reminded her of her grandmother's kitchen in Mexico, full of love and struggle and hope. "After she died, I drove past here hundreds of times, remembering her laugh when you brought us extra salsa because she was obviously pregnant and craving spicy food." The memory hit Maria like a physical force. She remembered that couple now, the well-dressed man and the glowing woman who'd seemed so happy together. They'd talked about opening their own restaurant someday, and Isabella had complimented the food while asking detailed questions about Maria's recipes and family history. At the time, Maria had assumed they were young entrepreneurs doing research. Now she understood they were grieving people looking for connection to simpler, happier times. "When I saw your help wanted sign 6 months ago," Eddie continued writing, "I knew Isabella would have wanted me to help, but not in the obvious way. She always said the best gift you can give someone isn't money, it's believing they're capable of succeeding on their own. So I decided to work alongside you, to earn my place here, to understand what you really needed rather than what I assumed you needed." The breakfast rush began filtering through the front door, but Maria found herself reluctant to break this moment of truth. "And the notes? The help with equipment? The way you seem to know exactly what everyone needs?" "Isabella taught elementary school for 15 years, he wrote. "She believed everyone carries invisible burdens, and that sometimes a single encouraging word can change someone's entire day. I learned to see people the way she did, to notice when someone needs hope more than advice, or money more than sympathy." The notes are my way of channeling her wisdom. As customers began filling booths and the morning routine demanded attention, Maria made a decision that surprised even herself. "We'll talk more after closing time," she told Eddie. "But right now, we have people to feed, and I want you to know, you've earned your place here through more than just hard work. You've earned it by caring about people who needed someone to care." The day progressed with unusual awareness on Maria's part. She found herself observing Eddie's interactions with staff and customers through new eyes, recognizing the subtle ways he'd been supporting everyone around him. When Rosa, the weekend waitress, mentioned struggling with her car payments, Eddie had quietly arranged for the diner's mechanic friend to do the repairs it cost. When the elderly Mr. Kim slipped on wet tiles, Eddie had been the first to his side, helping him up with gentle dignity that preserved the man's pride. During the lunch rush, Maria noticed Eddie watching her work with an expression she now recognized as professional admiration. He wasn't just learning from her. He was genuinely impressed by her management skills, her ability to maintain quality under pressure, her natural leadership that kept the small team functioning smoothly despite challenging circumstances. The realization was both flattering and intimidating. As afternoon settled into evening, the revelation of Eddie's true identity began affecting Maria in unexpected ways. She felt exposed, as if the past 6 months of struggling to keep the restaurant afloat had been observed by someone who could have solved her problems effortlessly. At the same time, she felt honored that someone with his resources and options had chosen to spend his time learning from her, rather than simply acquiring her business or offering charity. The dinner crowd was lighter than usual due to the persistent rain, giving Maria time to process the day's emotional upheaval. She watched Eddie moving through his closing routine with characteristic thoroughness, cleaning and organizing with the same attention to detail he'd shown from his first day. Nothing about his work ethic had been performance or pretense, she realized. This was simply who he was, someone who found meaning in doing things correctly regardless of the task's apparent importance. When the last customer departed and the front door was locked, Maria joined Eddie in the kitchen for their postponed conversation. She'd spent the day formulating questions and concerns, but now, facing him directly, most seemed less important than understanding his emotional journey. "Tell me about Isabella," she said simply, settling onto a nearby stool. "Not the teacher or the foundation namesake, but the woman who made you want to wash dishes in my restaurant." Eddie's response came slowly, each word carefully chosen. She was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, who brought soup to neighbors when they were sick, who cried during commercial featuring rescue dogs. She saw potential in everyone, even in me when I was just another construction worker with big dreams and no education. He paused to gather his thoughts before continuing. After she died, I threw myself into the foundation work because it felt like honoring her memory. But I realized I was just writing checks and attending meetings, never actually connecting with the people we were supposed to be helping. I was becoming the kind of wealthy donor who thinks money solves everything without understanding what people really need. "So you decided to start over," Maria observed. "I decided to learn what Isabella always knew instinctively," he corrected. "That helping people isn't about having resources, it's about paying attention, about seeing them as individuals with their own strengths and dreams, not just problems to be solved. Working here taught me that you don't need millions of dollars to make someone's day better. Sometimes you just need to notice when they're struggling and offer exactly what they're ready to receive." The kitchen felt intimate in the soft lighting. The day's chaos settled into peaceful quiet. Maria found herself seeing Eddie clearly for perhaps the first time, not as the mysterious employee or the wealthy philanthropist, but as a grieving man who'd chosen the most difficult path toward healing. "What happens now?" she asked. "Do you go back to your foundation work? Do you stop pretending to need this job?" Eddie was quiet for a long time before responding. "I wasn't pretending to need this job," he wrote carefully. "I needed to prove to myself that I could still contribute something meaningful through my own efforts, not just my bank account. Working here, earning your trust and respect, learning from your leadership, it's given me something Isabella's death took away. It's given me back my sense of purpose." "But surely you can't keep washing dishes forever," Maria pressed. "Your foundation must need your attention. There must be important decisions waiting for your approval." "The foundation runs itself quite well," Eddie replied. "Isabella insisted we hire excellent people and create systems that didn't depend on micromanagement. The best thing I can do for the organizations we support is stay connected to the reality of working people's lives, not lose myself in boardrooms and charity galas." Maria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rain-slicked street where Eddie would soon catch the first of 3 buses home. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Are you planning to buy this restaurant? Is this all some elaborate way to acquire a property or business that interests you?" When she turned back, Eddie was shaking his head emphatically, already writing his response. "I would never do that. This restaurant belongs to you, reflects your vision and hard work. If anything, working here has taught me to respect what you've built, far too much to interfere with it." "Then what do you want?" she asked directly. "Because I can't pretend anymore that you're just another employee. Knowing who you are changes everything, even if I don't want it to." Eddie set down his pen and looked at her for a long moment before writing his most honest response yet. "I want to keep learning from you. I want to keep being part of something real and meaningful. I want to honor Isabella's memory by staying connected to the kind of people and community work she loved. And I want to help in ways that respect your independence and leadership, rather than undermining them." The sincerity in his words was unmistakable, but Maria still felt overwhelmed by the implications. "How can I treat you like a regular employee when I know you could buy and sell this place 100 times over? How do I give you orders or correct your work when you have more business experience than I'll ever have?" "The same way you have been," he wrote simply. "Because in this kitchen, doing this work, I'm learning from you. Your experience managing this restaurant, leading this team, serving this community, it's knowledge I can't buy or acquire any other way. I'm not here as a wealthy patron observing poverty. I'm here as someone who lost his way and needs to remember what meaningful work feels like." The conversation was interrupted by a sharp knock on the back door, unusual for this time of evening. Maria opened it to find Tommy Rodriguez, the teenager who worked part-time, standing in the rain with tears streaming down his face. Behind him stood a woman Maria recognized as his mother, looking exhausted and frightened. "Mrs. Gonzalez," Tommy's voice cracked as he spoke. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I didn't know where else to go. They turned off our electricity again, and my mom's insulin needs to stay cold, and the shelters are all full tonight because of the rain." Before Maria could respond, Eddie had moved to the large refrigerator, pulling out containers of leftover food and a small cooler. He wrote quickly on a notepad and showed it to Tommy's mother. There's a 24-hour diner 6 blocks east that has an outlet near the back booth, where you can plug in a charger for medical devices. The night manager, Carlos, will let you stay as long as you need if you mention Eddie sent you. Tommy's mother read the note with growing amazement. How do you know Carlos? And why would he help us? Eddie wrote another response. I helped his family last year when they were in a similar situation. People like Carlos understand that everyone needs help sometimes, and everyone deserves dignity while receiving it. As Tommy and his mother gathered the food and prepared to leave, Eddie pressed something into the teenager's hand. Maria caught a glimpse of folded bills, probably several $100s, enough to restore their electricity and buy groceries for weeks. The gesture was done so discreetly that Tommy's mother never saw it, preserving her dignity while ensuring their immediate crisis was resolved. After they left, Maria stood in the kitchen doorway staring at Eddie with new understanding. That's what you've been doing all along, isn't it? Solving problems quietly, helping people without making them feel like charity cases. Isabella taught me that the most important help happens when people don't realize they're being helped, he wrote. When they feel empowered rather than pitied, when they maintain their self-respect while getting what they need. It took me years to learn that lesson, and I'm still learning it. The evening's events had shifted something fundamental in Maria's perception. Eddie wasn't just a wealthy man playing at poverty. He was someone genuinely committed to understanding and serving his community in the most humble way possible. His presence at the diner wasn't about him, it was about everyone else he could quietly support and encourage. I have a proposition, Maria said suddenly. But I need you to hear me out completely before responding. Eddie nodded, giving her his full attention. I can't pretend you're just another dishwasher anymore, but I also can't lose what you bring to this place. Not just your work ethic, or your ability to fix things, but your way of seeing people, your talent for knowing exactly what someone needs to hear. So here's what I propose. Stay on as kitchen manager. It's a real position with real responsibilities, managing inventory, training new staff, maintaining equipment. It pays better than dishwashing, but more importantly, it acknowledges your actual skills while keeping you connected to the daily operations you seem to love. She paused to gauge his reaction before continuing. In exchange, I want your honest advice about growing the business sustainably. Not your money, your expertise. Help me make decisions that will strengthen what we've built, rather than changing its essential character. Be the business mentor Isabella would have wanted you to be, someone who empowers rather than takes over. Eddie considered her offer carefully, writing several lines before showing his response. I would be honored to accept that position, but only if you agree to 2 conditions. First, my foundation will never directly fund this restaurant or anything related to it. I don't want there to ever be confusion about whether your success belongs to you or to my money. Second, I want to establish a community fund, separate from my foundation, that helps people like Tommy's family. Small amounts, given discreetly, funded by a percentage of the restaurant's profits as it grows. That way, the help comes from the community's success, not from outside charity. Maria read his proposal twice, recognizing the wisdom in maintaining clear boundaries while creating sustainable support systems. You really have learned from Isabella, haven't you? Every day, he wrote. But working here, learning from you, has taught me things about leadership and community building that I never understood before. You've shown me that real success isn't measured by how much money you accumulate, it's measured by how many people you help discover their own strength and potential. As they finished closing the restaurant and prepared to part ways for the evening, Maria felt a sense of resolution she hadn't experienced in months. The crisis of Eddie's revealed identity had somehow transformed into an opportunity for both of them to grow in unexpected directions. One more thing, she said as Eddie gathered his belongings. Tomorrow, I want you to meet with our food suppliers about negotiating better rates. And next week, I'd like your input on expanding our catering services to local businesses. Not because you're wealthy, but because you understand business operations in ways that could benefit everyone who works here. Eddie's smile was the first completely unguarded expression she'd seen from him since his arrival. Isabella would have loved seeing how you handle challenges, he wrote. She always said the measure of a true leader is how they respond when unexpected opportunities disguise themselves as problems. The rain had stopped by the time they stepped outside, leaving the streets clean and shining under the streetlights. As Eddie walked toward his bus stop, Maria watched him with gratitude and anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new possibilities for building something stronger than either of them could have created alone. 6 months later, Rosie's Diner had doubled its staff and expanded its menu while maintaining the intimate, community-focused atmosphere that defined its character. Eddie had proven to be an exceptional kitchen manager, training new employees with the same patient attention he'd once devoted to washing dishes. The community fund had quietly assisted dozens of families, always in ways that preserved dignity while providing genuine help. Maria often found herself grateful for the afternoon when Eddie's secret had been revealed, not because knowing his wealth had changed their relationship, but because his honesty had deepened their mutual respect and opened possibilities for collaboration neither had anticipated. Together, they'd created something that honored Isabella's memory while building a sustainable foundation for community support. The thank you notes continued appearing throughout the restaurant, but now Maria understood they represented something far more valuable than wealthy philanthropy. They represented the deep satisfaction that comes from using whatever resources you have, whether money or attention or encouragement, to help others discover their own capacity for success and happiness. Every evening as they closed the restaurant together, Maria reflected on the lesson Eddie's presence had taught her, that true generosity isn't about the size of what you give, but about the wisdom and respect with which you give it. In learning to see Eddie clearly, she'd also learned to see herself and her community with new appreciation for the strength and potential that had been there all along, waiting to be recognized and supported. The mute dishwasher had indeed left thank you notes for restaurant customers, but the most important note had been the one that revealed him as someone who understood that the greatest gift you can give another person is the opportunity to succeed on their own terms, while knowing someone believes in their ability to do exactly that. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.